the wonderful translator, Mr. Susu Kasaria as well, and publicist Vinasta. I was one of the early readers of the book, and I can tell with a strong endorsement that the book is not just offering a topical literary piece from the land of Nepal, but also it is related literature from South Asia, dealing with the tough issue of migration, arts, and overall it gives a story which we can see that it's a complete South Asian diaspora, complete South Asian diaspora. In today's time, when thinking about South Asia, it is increasingly becoming difficult. It's race-related absolutely just an issue. This is almost forgotten. We will not say that it is completely forgotten, but almost forgotten. And yet it is safe of beautiful literature. So congratulations once again. And you have said it before, I have been writing in great detail in Kathmandu and other places that the past literature is impossible. And so is the situation in India. Despite all the necessitated by pandemic. And the public industry is now like 2 years of cycle, different cycle. Still we can say that South Asia is often in the home to the rest of the world, very close to knowledge economy, and creating an ecosystem for the world. So many congratulations, and I'm so delighted to join the esteemed panel of Her Excellency Ms. Principal Gagan Mahatma, formidable appointment from the Bodhisattva is a wonderful writer, someone who is widely celebrated even outside the body of Nepal. Somna a gifted literary figure, and of course Sumi, who is a bilingual scholar. And as much as I know, he is a good friend, that he has equal command on both languages, be it Nepali and English. So with your work is yet not completed, you are going to open now the fresh literary insights to all of us who are your readers and great admirers. I will not go much into detail of the book because Sumaji has covered it very beautifully, but I will go for questions. But I must add here that as one of the early readers in Pacific, I am someone who wished for the publication of this book. I am very delighted with it, and you are in great demand in India. And believe me that your next book will not take much of time before it will be picked up by very easy. So you will be spoiled from the choices. So it is your task now to complete your next book out as soon as possible. As far as literary market is concerned, I think Nepal has evolved in the last 2 decades. Now it has had good homegrown market for publication also. At the same time, it is creating a strong interface with Indian medicine now from the same industry, which was doing the business annually in tune of more than $2 million in India. Our situation is changed here, but we can assume that in the next few months there will be some reassuring data will come our way. In that, I think Nepal and India should work more closely, especially the writers, and further strengthen this ecosystem. So other way around as Kathmandu process, some of the top intellectuals and we are here. So it's not just that Nepal writers will get published here, but other way around, Indian writers also I mean, they will be more than happy if they will give themselves to publish from Kathmandu's publishers. And also I'm aware that Nepal is having more than 5-6 good literary festivals as well. So a lot of things are happening there, and why not we should also count this as one of the key areas of collaboration and this is our cornerstone of bilateral units. Gagan Thapaji is here. I would like to hear from him more about this. He is the leader of the nation and many others esteemed leaders. In the course of time, if there is question, I will be more than happy to take. For now, I am stopping here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Thakur. I agree with you. We look forward to more and more books from Mr. Sumit Sarma Samir. and we also look forward to joint collaborations like you just mentioned. Thank you so much for your time. Now, taking the program forward, we have the next speaker, Her Excellency Miss Felicity Wolf. She's the Australian ambassador to Nepal. And in addition to her laudable and impressive work as a career diplomat, she is also a celebrated author herself. Thank you so much for joining us today via Zoom. She is joining us from her office in Kathmandu, and we look forward to hear you speak as an author. Thank you.
Freedom Studios on mute. I'm not sure if you want me to start speaking yet. If you could let me know. We haven't heard anything. Okay. Namaste to everyone. I am guessing that I have been invited to speak. I'm sorry, Freedom Studio was on mute, but I'm hoping that it's appropriate for me to start speaking now. If someone could just maybe let me know. Brilliant, thank you. Sorry about that. Namaste to everyone who's gathered today, and thank you to Sumit Samir for the invitation to join this launch. I'm incredibly honoured to be among the esteemed company which has gathered to celebrate the arrival of Sumit's new book. I also offer my commiserations to Sumit that perhaps this new COVID wave has affected his plans for a large in-person celebration. Certainly, it's because of COVID I'm not joining you today. I don't have COVID, but I need to avoid large gatherings at the moment. But I hope, and it did look like there are a lot of people who have joined this celebration. So I'm hoping that this book is being given the attention it deserves. And Foodland, I'd love to be with you in person. I feel the impacts of COVID on launches of books very keenly, because when I was launching my second novel in March of 2020, I had several hundred guests who were confirmed to join me at the National Library of Australia to celebrate the launch of my second book, Design Lines. But due to COVID restrictions at the last minute, the event and many others I had planned were cancelled, so I well understand the disappointment when it's not possible to celebrate the arrival of a new book quite as extensively as hoped. But I do heartily congratulate Sumit for reaching this point. It's a great achievement to conceive, write, edit and publish a work of fiction, and then to do it again in a second language. And on that score, I must of course also acknowledge the efforts of the book's translator, Shushrut Acharya. The task of an accurate translation, one that holds true to both the poetry and the intent of language, and that preserves the integrity of the artist, their artistic integrity. This is an example done very well in this book. When Sumit first approached me to say a few words at the to Wake Up Army, Wake Up Now, I was intrigued by the cover notes and also the subtitle, A South Asian Diasporic Story. This story relevance to so many Nepalis, because Nepalis are indeed a race of wanderers, studying, working and making new lives abroad. And I'm reminded of this because Australia's own census results recently released attest to the fact that the Nepali community in Australia has doubled in the last 5 years. But I was also intrigued by Sumit's work because my first novel, Lightning, is itself at one level the story of South Asian and other diaspora throughout Australia's history. From the Afghan cavaliers of the 1800s who worked in outback Australia with their beloved animals, through to my protagonist, Ahmed, a Pakistani surgeon who has pretended to be an Afghan to gain asylum in Australia in the early 2000s. So as I read Wake Up Ali, I was struck by the similarities of theme in Sunit's work and mine. It was almost a zeitgeist experience. And therefore I was reminded that the story of being a stranger in a strange land is in fact a universal story. It is not Ali's story alone, nor my Ahmed's story, nor a Nepali story in Australia, nor even an Australian ambassador in Nepal's story. It is a story that belongs to each one of us from the moment that we leave our homes and walk into another world, becoming an outsider, unmoored, to some degree anonymous, with all the challenges, the pains, the loss and grief that such journeys entail, but also all of the joys, the new understandings, the growth and enlivening that come from that experience, those wake-up moments to which the title of this book alludes. Indeed, it is not necessary to cross a national boundary to have the experience that Ali has in Canada. It is possible to experience being a stranger within our own communities, and sometimes even within our own homes and within our secret inner lives. And this is what Ali describes to us as we travel with him from Pakistan to Canada, back to Pakistan, to New York after his wife and daughter relocate there with him, and finally back to Pakistan again. Whether living in the place of our birth or the places that we adopt as new homes, whether among families or among strangers, or even among family who are strangers to us, we experience dislocation, separation, and find ourselves struggling to shape our identity. For example, in Canada, Ali reflects on his friend Ahil's relationship with his son. He says, father and son were living in their own separate worlds with their own private plans. These two represented two different generations. These different points of view were waging a jihad against each other under the same roof. And Ali might well have described his marriage to Sarah in the same way, as a type of jihad waged against each other under their marital roof, marked more by alienation than connection, marked more by separation than by union, by betrayals. Pursue love in New York, but it is also a relief when Ali joins Sarah in New York for their daughter's wedding, and there is finally a true sense of empathy, understanding and connection between them. Finally, there is honesty and authenticity. Ali says, there wasn't any conflict left between Zara and me, as the matter of honest identity never invites conflict. Through Ali, some important age-old questions. How is identity shaped? What makes it play its home? How do we define ourselves when separated from the culture of our birth and our community? And Samit asks these questions not just at the individual existential level, but at the national level, using the context of Canada to reflect on the way a country shapes and defines itself in an opposition to outsiders, just as outsiders define themselves in opposition to the place that they have adopted as home. He writes, Canadians took pride in their past. They saw themselves somewhere in their past, but they also held a critical view towards history. He continues, Canadian society was well organised, but I didn't consider total organisation to be good in itself. When I saw the Canadian elderly wandering alone in the streets, my heart cried. Our grandfathers and grandmothers become valueless. But as much as Ali experiences Canada as alien and also alienating, he also recognises that however far apart countries might be in terms of geography or culture, they are fundamentally as similar as the people who occupy them. He says, Canada and Pakistan aren't much different from each other. People are the same everywhere, governed by nature's rules and their own passions. When Ali comes to the end of his journey in returning to Lahore after making peace with Zara in New York, he finally discovers a sense of home. It is a sense of home that is driven less by the place and by the epiphany of connection to true self. Indeed, Amy has finally woken up. His inner voice exhorting, "Wake up, Amy," disappears. He says, "I have begun to live a reanimated life after already having been alive for 60 years. Finally, I had arrived home. Finally, my exile had ended." At that point in Amy's awakening, we readers are reminded of the quote by modernist American poet T.S. Eliot. In Little Gideon, Eliot writes, "We shall not see from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time." So I congratulate Smith on his novel. It is a deeply philosophical work, and one that will resonate for all travellers. And by that I mean each one of us, because we are each travelling, if not through place, then through the vicissitudes of our daily lives, and through our struggles to make meaningful connections with self and with other. And so we're grateful to submit through this protagonist diary for the reminder that all exiles ultimately end.
I speak as an author. It is wonderful. I've heard you speak many times, but this time I could get a glimpse of the author in you. Thank you so much for sharing how you identify with the protagonist. Thank you so much for your time. Now, we finally arrived at the moment we've been all waiting for, the launch of the book. So I'll request all the speakers at the dais and in our screens to launch the book. We would also like to invite the translator of the book, Mr. Shushrut, to kindly join us on stage for the unveiling of the book.
Hello.
Thank you. Yes, we have everybody with their books. And let's give a round of applause. With this unveiling, we launch the book, Wake Up Ali, Wake Up Now. When you have the time, please sign the books as well. Thank you so much for your presence. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And now, we would like to welcome Honorable Mr. Gavan Thapa to come up to the podium to say a few words. Mr. Gavan Thapa needs no introduction. He is the former Minister of Health and is currently General Secretary of Nepali Congress, Member of the Parliament in the House of Representatives, an eloquent speaker, a thought-provoker, and a shining star of our political landscape. We can't wait to hear you speak. Thank you.
Your Excellency, Madam Ambassador, Atulji, Sagunaji, Priya Lekak Buddhi Sagarji, Shushrut Acharya-ji, Sumit-ji, Baba, Ama, Binu, other family members, dear friends, colleagues, seniors. Thank you, Sumit. Thank you for inviting me. I don't remember my first encounter with Sumit. However, I do remember the year. It was in 2053 BS, 25 years ago. We went to same college, TC, around Trichandra. I have so many memories with Sumit of those days. Playing cricket, Sumit was a great all-rounder. Partying, he was an amazing cook. खास गरी यो मटनको सेकुवा Bindu, no? He was at the time when we were not there. Traveling, participating in political rallies, parties, a lot more. He was there for around 2 years, and then he left to India, and then he went to LSE and Canada and much more. But our friendship didn't end here. It grew. That our wives became friends, our family became friends, we became family. In fact, we are a family. So that is how I came to know about Sumit. I always knew that Sumit has a very sharp mind. He was an intellect. He had a very keen interest in political and social issues. As one of my closest friends, I thought that I knew almost each and every dimension of Sumit. However, when I read this first Pravas and then this English version, I have to admit that one thing I never knew about Sumit was his emotional sense. I always knew that he was capable of writing non-fiction because he has that exposure, understanding, knowledge, depth. But I never predicted that he would write stories related to love, human emotions, something like that. I had no clue that he has such an interest in non-fiction. He has deep interest in human emotions. When Sumit approached me to say a few words on his book, I wanted to say, no bro, I am not fit for this job. I still feel that. I still feel same. And for two reasons. I love to read. Of course, I love to read non-fiction, as we all do. But I entirely lack that intellect to come here. Netaji doesn't mean that he or she can do anything. To come here and speak on a book and sheer panel with distinguished figures here, I'm really scared. Second, as Sumit is my near and dear friend, I would certainly have a bias. So that was the reason I hesitated, but I had no choice. So that's why I'm here. So let me speak very briefly on the book itself. This is a sociological fiction, I would say. This is about social structure, human relationship, and individual's relation to the society. This is a story of migrants, stories of how diasporas struggle in the modern day global society. The conflict between migrants and natives, the opportunity cost, how one has to disconnect with their loved ones to get connected to the larger world to grab the opportunities. I could see through the characters how the whole process of globalization on the one hand brings people together, but on the other hand, at the same time, makes them dysfunctional. The protagonist tries to relate his life to the life of an ant. He's struggling to find his space, to find his identity in the larger cosmic design. There is an ongoing conflict between the material world and his spiritual thought process. As Buddhist Sagarji mentioned earlier, when I was reading the story, when I was going through the book, I paused at several points to reflect, to find a deeper meaning. So page number 16 to last paras is one of the examples, where he writes that people have no choice but to choose from existing choices. It happens everywhere, here and then and there. It talks about how we have been caged, and the best we can fly, best one can fly, is how we fly inside the cage itself. A very powerful monologue. This sort of powerful statement you can find here and there. The author has also questioned whether the human emotions would be as authentic as it used to be. He is deeply concerned, moved and bothered about whether man would probably forget how to express human sentiments, or would express if he or she express, that will certainly be on authentic sentiment. And the reason is, AI has embodied the human emotion itself. I'll stop here. To find more, you have to go through the book. I can assure you that none of you are going to regret it. And as Sagunaji has mentioned, I'm confident that you will finish it, if not in one sitting, you might take 5 days, 4 days, but you are not going to regret it. Today I'm not only happy, I'm proud to be here, to be part of Sumit's journey. I feel tall and grand to call myself that I'm Sumit's friend. Good luck to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your kind words. We can listen to you for hours if you allow us. But we've come to the end of this wonderful book launch. We wish Mr. Sumit Sharma grand success, great success, more books to come in the future. I hope this book, and I believe also this book, will be able to make a mark in hearts of people and contribute significantly to the Nepali literature. Thank you again for your presence, for coming here. Please enjoy some refreshments. We have arranged high tea for you.